Empathy is knowing our own dark
Words
technologies.
have power. Like
Without that connection, you don't have anything.
What's the opposite of addiction?
Just freedom.
And here we are. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 52 of Finding Peaks, I believe.
Wow.
I nailed it. I know I got that right. It's number 52. For all the naysayers out there, I can count. Anyways, welcome back, everybody. Brandon Burns, Chief Executive Officer for Peaks Recovery Centers. Excited to be hosting again today to talk about a not often talked about topic, case management, joined by Chief Clinical Officer Jason Friesma. Might have some good things to say about it. And for all the viewers out there who have been emailing us, fervently at finding peaks at peaksrecovery.com.
Yeah.
Obviously, I haven't done this in a while. Bear with us, team. Clint Nicholson's back in the seat. He's been gone for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Chief Operating Officer for Peaks Recovery Centers. All here today to talk about all things case management. To fire off this topic, I remember once upon a time being a marketer for Peaks Recovery Centers, and what that entailed at the time when we didn't have residential and detox programming is I would go into other facilities and market for Peaks. I would hand out brochures and I would say, these are the things that we do. And for all the viewers who watch these episodes, I'm engaged in our vision of disrupting an industry. And what I found disruptive to me at that time was, instead of case management stating, hey, Peaks Recovery Centers in this example is the right center for you, what they would do is they'd hand out 4 or 5 different brochures and say, here are these, tour these facilities, and you pick one. And for me, that was discouraging because it didn't feel that there was any intentionality behind the case management, that it wasn't directional, and it wasn't moving in the direction of the curriculum of the residential program and what they had already done with the patient care at that time. So ultimately, Peaks created a curriculum or a full continuum of care that allowed us to kind of move away from that and choose our own path in regards to case management and what we do with patient care. But it's a challenging position. It's a challenging department within any organization within addiction treatment for a variety of different reasons. One of those being that insurance companies aren't out to pay for this as a service. So it usually falls down the ladder of importance from medical to clinical programming to residential and to case management and so forth. So just hopeful after that winded introduction to talk a little bit more case management, how we can make it a bit more intentional, but also to talk about the different features of what treatment might look like beyond the levels of cares of detox and residential programming. And I thought a fun place to start would be that occasionally, it doesn't matter that we believe somebody needs to go into a PHP program or to an IOP model or an outpatient model or receive medication management. Some people say, I don't want to do any of that. I'm just going to go into the rooms, AA, NA, CA, and so forth as my path, for recovery. So that, in a way, kind of removes the opportunity for case management to be effective because there's nothing we can really advocate for or be intentional about. I do want to advocate and be pro, AA, NA. They're invaluable resources. They're absolutely free to anybody out there who, at times can't access care or just needs, a good group of individuals to hang out with, maybe to, avoid a relapse or whatever the case might be. But so an individual picks and chooses, say, Alcoholics Anonymous to go to, as their aftercare plan, and just hopeful that we can review kind of the pros and cons of that decision, maybe as the only path of a case management out of a residential programming. So I think starting with the pros is important. It's been around forever. I think this industry built, its collective effort on the backs of the rooms in and of themselves, the big book in general. So what are the positive aspects when somebody chooses and says, you know what, I'm not going to do all of this aftercare stuff that you guys have highlighted as an organization, but I am interested in AA and that's what I'm going to do. Immediately, we feel good about that, and why?
Okay, so I'll start. I think there's a variety of pros, actually. Accessibility. You don't have to wait or be on a waiting list or do an intake. You literally can walk into a meeting any hour of the day in any city, really around the world for the most part. And I think So that accessibility, and then it's free as well. And then I do think some of the magic sauce that AA has is the sense of community, and I think that part, that has kind of stood the test of time a little bit, is that the need for community and the need to kind of connect with other people. So I took 3 pros. What do you got?
Well, I'll piggyback because you took all the good ones.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I think
that's why I went first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're like, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the sense of community is probably the key, actually. Content of meetings is exactly the same everywhere you go, and that's actually kind of the point. Besides the individual shares that happen in the rooms, the actual format of the meeting is the same, the contents of the meeting are generally the same, the messages are generally the same. They're all coming out of either the big book or the NA book, whatever the case may be. And so there's something about that predictability, which is also really important. It provides structure within a community as well. And I think that, the reality of the situation is you get out of a residential program and you've only just gotten out of treatment, but your recovery actually starts as soon as you walk out the door. That's when recovery actually starts. And you have access to a lot of access, actually, like Jason was saying, to a recovery community, which in the end is what you're going to need to stay sober or sort of stay on the right path if you are struggling with mental health issues, regardless. Yeah.
And it has the unique feature too, of course, right, of a sponsor, right? Not only do you have the group environment where you create that community, get that nice AA coffee in your hand, which is usually heavy with caffeine.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the rooms as it goes. And you have the sponsor, and the sponsor's guiding you through the steps, right? A person of accountability is created in your life that you can engage with, phone calls, texts, and so forth, right? As a positive experience of that. And so I think there's a lot operating, as you guys said, within like a community sense of things, right? And I also think about the rooms in a big way around, addiction in general, right? So we have the maladaptive behavior of drinking in the face of, having an emotional dysregulation, driving down the road, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, or issues with, spouse in that regard, I drink, so triggered drink, right? Triggered drink, right? Well, when you leave a residential model after 30 days, those triggers could be anywhere from 100 to 1,000, triggers, depending on the amount of time that you've been using drugs or alcohol in general. And so I think about the meetings as well, too, as like triggered through the lens of neuroplasticity, that I'm triggered now and I choose a meeting, and I'm triggered and I reach out to my sponsor, and I'm triggered and I do the meeting. And rinse, wash, repeat that over the course of a year or two now, and the neuroplastic, the plasticity of the brain then says, trigger, and we have this safe environment. And I think there's a lot of value in that. Now, I said pros and cons. I want to be delicate here because this is a massive organization. These organizations are massive and so important.
And can I throw out also, just because we do mental health as well, throw out NAMI as far as meetings for people who are struggling with mental health as well, that there are actually these community-based meetings. And we partner with NAMI and they do great work. But
perfect. And so the cons aren't about what they're not doing, because they do what they do and they're significant in the way that they do it. But if somebody picks that path, say who has a history of trauma or who has a history of mental health and doesn't utilize maybe a therapist or something, so now we're back in the lens of case management. Okay, trying to encourage somebody, yes, take all those things seriously, do those things. Those are actually very important aspects of aftercare. At the same time, what are we missing if we only go down that lane by not choosing an IOP program or seeing a therapist on the side and so forth? And I'm sure it'll vary.
Would you like to go first again, Jason?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I can take the low-hanging fruit, and then you have to reach a little higher.
Yeah.
I think there's a variety of things missing, and Clinton started to allude to it a little bit, but at least in the anonymous communities, it is difficult. There's a wide spectrum of views on mental health in that. I've certainly known a lot of people who have left a treatment facility, meet a sponsor, and the sponsor's like, you can't be on any medication. That's all drugs, and you got to come off of all of that. And that can kind of unravel a lot of work and a lot of effort on behalf of a client when they are attempting to get stable from a mental health issue. You know, and like, I think there tends to be this, there can be a tendency in AA to just view AA as the only cure for all mental health type needs, and I don't think that tends to be the case. And I see it happen, truthfully. And I think, so having good aftercare for psychiatric needs and that sort of thing, and then dealing with depression or dealing with trauma, I think going through the steps, working a good fourth and fifth step, that can bring out some trauma. And if there isn't kind of a container or a way to process it, sometimes that needs some professional help, I would say. So just having that as an avenue, it certainly has worked for a lot of people, and I'm not disparaging that in any way. However, I think it leaves a wide lane of things that aren't treated.
Fair? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we going to debate this?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, again, to be delicate, because they're, you know, these 12-step programs have been around for so long and have helped so many people.
Yeah.
I guess in my own experience, the primary difference between like a well-run IOP program and something like AA or NA or CA is typically the message of the rooms is that the answer is AA, the answer is NA, the answer is CA. And a good IOP program is going to reinforce the fact that actually the answer is you. Like you are the answer to your own problems. Like in the end, you're gonna have to come up with a lifestyle and with the skills and with the motivation to actually make the change that you need, and the program doesn't do that for you. And I think that there's a pretty, and sometimes it's a subtle distinctions, and sometimes it's pretty glaring as far as what the reliance is.
If I can piggyback on what you said, I think it can be stated too that like the anonymous programs, not only is AA the solution, but it says I am the problem.
Right.
I am an alcoholic, I am an addict. And like, it's important to work through denial. That's a really important thing to kind of walk through. But that statement and kind of having to really adhere to it says, I am the problem, this meeting is the solution.
Yeah, the program is the solution.
And to your point, I think going to an IOP program says, here's the problem over here, and you are the solution for the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things, because I want to, I can feel the room sort of boiling behind us as a metaphor here, but the one thing that I absolutely want to be charitable to the rooms about too, and the frustrations, and if the general public doesn't know this, there is a sort of tension between the rooms and treatment centers in general. Why is that? I think to simply put it is because this industry took the rooms and inserted it into group services and then billed for the past 40, 50 years since insurance started covering behavioral health, billions of dollars on the backs of free programming.
Yeah.
And I just want to make that distinction, make that clear where this sort of tension arises, I think, between, you know, treatment centers and the rooms in general. And charitably to the rooms, like, in my absolute opinion, that was completely inappropriate and uncalled for and unnecessary.
And it goes against the 12 traditions of AA, that people are profiting from AA meetings. Like
Absolutely,
that,
yeah.
It's literally against their bylaws.
And it could have been something where there was actually like a marriage, where there was something that was very, where each of those programs really could help to support each other, but instead there was just this like sort of bastardization of what the rooms actually offered, and done under this like sort of, I don't know, very thin clinical lens, which isn't, which is something that, I mean, you know, at Peaks we've really moved away from very intentionally, and I think good programs in general have done that as well.
Yeah, we should do this collectively and together, and then when the rooms are doing their things and treatment centers are doing their things appropriately, IOP programs and so forth, there's a healthy marriage that's operating there. Yeah. But conflating the two and charging for something that is free, I think is inappropriate, and I just wanted to highlight that because of where this general tension, when I say like, you know, the rooms are boiling in the background about a treatment center talking in this way, I think it comes from that sort of arena. So we've highlighted a moment where an individual says, I'm not doing any of the therapy stuff. I think we see, you know, where we can kind of improve upon the setting to have, you know, to be doing the rooms, but also to be doing alternative things as well too. But with intentionality, right? Peaks has its own curriculum. We've talked about it on past episodes here that this is one of the most fragmented sides of healthcare where everybody under their own philosophy can be doing their own curriculum that's different from the curriculum here, if there's even a curriculum over here. And for that reason, we have sort of them on their own sort of roller coaster trajectory here, right? And so we want to have some intentionality with what's working with them here into that next step. And with that, curious from your guys' clinical lens, what's important about that and sort of how do we get that right? And also, what are we trying to actually do with the individual on selling them into these aftercare models, right? Because it's not for the sake of it, right? The brain still needs a ton of time to heal in the process, so we're not trying to do it for the sake of it. What are we trying to do here?
Well, I do think we are professionalizing both the mental health treatment and then providing an opportunity for community. I think a good IOP program can emphasize both importantly, and really kind of helping people continue to build and form relationships and figure out how to navigate relationships effectively is actually a really important skill to build a primary support group in the long run. While dealing with, without judgment, clear mental health issues as well. I think that that part matters a ton, I think.
Yeah, that.
Thank you. Yeah, segue, awkward segue maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
I was dissociated.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah, welcome back, Clinton.
No.
I lost you at mental health. Okay.
For me, I think IOP is this opportunity for integration, right? It's like when you're in residential, you get these intensive, long days of just heavy, deep insight work, right? So you're really gaining insight into who you are as an individual, why you do the things you do, why you've chosen the coping strategies you've chosen, how you can do those differently. You start getting introduced to different coping strategies and different ways in which to sort of respond to the world, right? Like trigger, drink. Oh, now it's trigger, go work out, trigger, meditate. You get this opportunity in a very safe and controlled environment to start practicing these new skills that you've learned after building all of these deep insights. But IOP is the first chance when you're actually in the real world, and now you have to fully integrate the things that you've learned. And to do that, right, to just send somebody on their way without any support afterwards is pretty irresponsible in a lot of ways, because it's like asking somebody to be a professional football player, 45 days after you taught them how to throw a football. That doesn't make any sense. There's practice has to keep happening, and IOP is that opportunity to sort of practice in a semi-controlled environment, but in real life circumstances, in a real life world.
Yeah. And I love that too, because that awareness we gain in residential programming, because also what we're combating too in residential programming nearly on a daily basis is like, I'm not actually sure I need to be here. Right. I'm not actually sure I have a problem. I mean, one of the major things we overcome within a 30-day model is ambivalence. And I share this with families all the time who come through, peaks certainly, but sharing it with the families and the viewers out there today is, an individual comes in, even if we have a 6-week curriculum over 45 days, and they cut that to 30 days, we're missing 2 weeks of a curriculum. Now we have 4 weeks of a curriculum. Well, if detox took 7 days, we missed that part of the curriculum. And now in the next 2 weeks, if we're exploring just ambivalence about being here, we're not taking seriously the curriculum. We're not only not downloading the tools, we're definitely not implementing them. And then we get 1 week of an actual curriculum, like, okay, I get it. I think I have a problem now, and I'm engaged in this. And then we do no aftercare. And so the thing that comes up out of that for me is, people turn around and say, well, something like Peaks didn't work for me, or this treatment center didn't work for me. We don't get to open the heads of the individuals, look at what the issue is, and pluck it out of there. There's an application that has to take place here from the settings that they're in and out into the real world. And I think there's at times that, I don't know the right word here, maybe you guys can help me out here, but I think some patients feel like there's a sort of operating parentalism about what's best for me rather than what is actually best for me, and what's best for me is to do these sort of things. And so there's this sort of tugboat feature back and forth between the treatment center and the individual to really ensure that they get right what the actual issue is, and then from a setting that is safe and secure, that is nearly triggerless in a residential environment, though we find ways to trigger people all the time. At Peaks Recovery, it could be our pillows, it could be the iPads, it could be whatever, but those aren't enough to get ahead of everything from an application standpoint, and I think we're getting to the essence of what the importance of case management is moving from an environment of safety and security where we can get comfortable with each other to build enough rapport to state, hey, we need to apply these skills somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it takes time.
Yeah.
And I do think, I think it's pretty well accepted, and there are a lot of studies out there that the longer somebody is in some form of treatment, it doesn't have to be 6 months of residential care, but if people are getting clinical contact and contact with the community even once a week at the back end of this, if they can get to a year of doing that, like the statistics are actually significantly better for people to remain sober for the long haul. And it just speaks to that, like, you just need people asking you some of these questions, or a place to say, I found a new trigger, or my dog ran away, or whatever it is that you have to begin to navigate in a new way, those triggers. So I think I can't emphasize it enough. We do a lot of magic, I think, in 45 days in our residential program, but it's really just the beginning of a journey.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we have a stabilization model. Like, we've stabilized you. It's why you feel good. Like, that's why you have confidence. You're clear-headed, you're healthy, you're exercising, you're eating right, you're sleeping finely, you're on the right medication regimen. You've landed in a place where you've built community. Even if you've only been there 30 days, you've made connections that have helped you feel safe, that have helped bring back a certain level of confidence. And as soon as you walk off that campus, all of it can disappear. Like, it happens all the time. Right. And it's not because the program didn't do what it was supposed to. The program did exactly what it was supposed to. It's that the hard work happens as soon as you leave. That's when the real work comes in, and that's what it is. It's actual work. Yeah. It's every day staying focused, staying engaged, staying on top of your thoughts, like really building on all of that insight that you've gained over the last 45 days. And to try to do that alone, or to try to do that in the exact same environment that you came from, it's a near impossibility. And at the very least, it's just not fair. It's not fair for a client to do that to themselves. It's not fair for a family to have to go through that. But at the same time, because people feel good, there's this sort of like, aftercare, maybe I don't need it. And that ambivalence, that's that last little bit of ambivalence that you get at the very end of the treatment episode, that's actually probably the most dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Never mind the neuro, the plastic brain operating in the background, though it's feeling good and healthy in that moment from a stabilization standpoint. All of those wires are in place to, when they experience trigger, right, to trigger drugs. It's the brain is impulsive in that moment and gonna pick what it's used to, even though there's some satiated period, right, in a way. And so, the last bullet point here, I think that I wanted to talk about and bring to everybody's attention, I think we've mentioned the Florida model of care in past treatment episodes, or in past Finding Peaks episodes. Charitable reading of the Florida model of care is to kind of build a framework for what would be like an ideal campus. And on this campus, families or individuals in treatment can get their therapy here, and they can walk across the campus, they can get a job, and then they can walk across the campus and do their meditation. They can walk across the campus, go into the rooms, those sort of things. But there is no real campus setting. And out of that, you get a sober living home. And the business model is to bus that individual from the sober, right or wrong, from the sober living home to the treatment center, where they receive, partial hospitalization or IOP services in that regard. And then they can take him, after those group services are rendered, to the job environment to apply for the job, or they can take him to the meetings to build community and sponsorship and so forth. And so, in its most cleanest ethical sense, it is a really nice thing. And I think what it really does control is, because people get into these models and this is more of a residential setting. I don't want this. I don't need this. Right. But I think the advantage of it and correct me if I'm wrong, or if maybe there's better language for it, is that it's containing that impulsivity that when you get outside of treatment. Now, if you are on this theoretical campus and you do your groups and you go into the rooms and you're triggered, well, the bus picks you up at the end of the day, brings you back to the sober home, and continue to have this community and this support effort all along the way, versus if you're in just an intensive outpatient program, call it 3 days a week, and it's a Tuesday and there's no groups going on and you're triggered in that moment, the impulsivity can flare up in any direction without that support structure, especially if we don't have the rooms as a backup or a belief that that's appropriate to go to or whatever the case is. So that is an opportunity post detox stabilization residential models. And it does have efficacy, but the common complaint is that's too much structure, when the structure is really doing something healthy there, and it's containing that impulsivity and giving it more time to adapt itself to the world in which it will be less triggered in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a step-down model, right? It's this idea that things come in a sequence. There's a sort of order of operations to this process. And in the end, the underlying theme is it just takes time. Mm-hmm. Like this does not happen overnight. You are literally rewiring the brain, and that will not happen in 45 days. It will not happen in 30 days. It will not happen in 90 days. It will not happen in 180 days. It takes time. And every little bit of time that you can give yourself, any extra day or week or month that you can give yourself more structure and more support, like Jason spoke to earlier, the better chance you have of being successful. And yeah, it's a lot of structure in the beginning, but most people, I don't care if it's substance abuse or if it's mental health, like severe acute mental health disorders, you're coming from a world of chaos, so give yourself the time, like enjoy the structure, mm-hmm. lean into it. That is going to be so profoundly important in your long-term recovery. And to pull away from that is really counter to what the recovery process looks like.
Yeah. Friesma, final words, final piggyback here?
I mean, you guys have said a lot, and I could not agree with, I couldn't agree with you more. And I do think, I just think about I was sitting here thinking about how many medical procedures have a similar format, whether if you break your leg, you get a surgery and maybe a cast and then a lower cast and then a walking cast. Like it's meant to be, and then all is progressive and building on one another. And if you're going to get knee surgery, you might as well follow through with the physical therapy afterward too. Like if you're going to, otherwise it was kind of almost pointless to get the knee surgery. Or you're going to have to
go back and get another knee surgery.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like there's just a lot of template for doing this, and it's interesting that we have to sell it so hard because it isn't as visible as like a scar on one's knee. Right. But it is the same concept for sure.
Yeah, and all the trade-offs along the way too. Families' intentions about what they think the patient should be going through and where the patient's actually at and what they're capable of is kind of a different narrative at times. So there's a lot of conflicts, throughout this as well too.
But if you get knee surgery, you don't argue with your orthopedic surgeon and say, "No, I don't want to do physical therapy." Like
that's silly.
I'm good.
Yeah, I feel great.
Yeah. You just do your physical therapy.
Yeah. Right. There's something about our industry that makes it difficult, right? Because we go and say, well, we want these things to happen. Well, I don't want to do those things. That's where, going back to the beginning about intentionality and not doing it for the sake of it. We're not trying to just insert you into, Peaks IOP post-treatment. Fine, not our IOP program. We get it. Not Colorado Springs, maybe not Denver. Wherever you're going, though, you got to tie into something to continue to nurture this.
Yeah. So please, listen to case management if your loved one is in treatment. And case management, like you said, it's probably one of the hardest things to do within our setting because of the fragmentation. Mm-hmm. But you have no idea what you're going to get half the time if you're going, which is one of the reasons why we built an internal IOP step-down program, right? Yeah. Because we knew that quality is lacking, or at the very least is inconsistent. But at the same time, this step-down process is vital. So please, if your loved one is at Peaks or any other facility, listen to the case management team, follow an aftercare plan, and take time and be patient with this process because healing takes time, if anything.
Yeah. Well, Clint wasn't the host today, but he gave us an exit and an out there. So
you're welcome.
I'll be angry with him later. And everybody's welcome for taking us out there. So with that, now that I know what I'm doing, finding Peaks at peaksrecovery.com, questions, thoughts, insights. Case Management, Florida Model Care, IOP, the rooms. Bring those questions to us. They're invaluable as far as what we can bring to the table and continue to support and educate family systems on. The Facebooks, the Twitters, the TikToks, Chris Burns, everybody.
Yeah.
Find us on the TikToks. He's screaming into the mic, having a good time with it, creating a recovery journey in real time. It's very exciting, so tune into that. Another host here, of course, if you haven't seen President Founder Chris Burns on the show, but he's on all the TikToks, so pay special attention to that. Otherwise, I'm going to be a part of, the three of us are going to be a part of, we're going to have some medical team members a part of. We got Dr. Stephen Alardi coming out on May 12th, I believe is the date for that. We're going to be doing some Finding Peaks episodes with him. His book is The Depression Cure. We'll have more ads out about it as well too, but looking forward to having him on as a guest in the coming days. Again, Dr. Stephen Alardi with The Depression Cure. And until then and until next time, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.